All right, welcome to Ableton Production Techniques. We are working on how to EQ your tracks. I'm Steve Knotts. Welcome to the feed. And today I'm going to show you how to work with presets. Whoa, turn off my monitor there. What this is all about is I'm teaching a course called How to EQ Your Tracks, which you can find at the Mixotexture member site, courses.mixotexture.com. And the course is like this, how to EQ your tracks. And I go through some basic audio engineering knowledge that you need to know about EQing. Like, what are the different types of EQ? What do they do? Where do you use them to make your tracks sound better? And what are the right frequencies to cut and boost? That's what you learn about. The range of human hearing, how it connects with EQ8 and auto filter to make your tracks sound pro. And to help you along, after you learn that stuff, you get a pack of presets in the course that you can drop on your tracks to start with. And this is a big debate in electronic music. A lot of people are going to be like, presets are for losers, presets don't work. If you need presets, you're not a real producer, whatever. People can say that. I'm giving you presets as a starting place to dial in for each sound. So in today's workshop, I made a new track, and I'm going to show you how I work with each of the presets from in this course and dial them in to match the song. All right, so that's what it's all about. You can see on the sidebar here, let me go full screen. Over here on the sidebar, I have my audio effects, EQ8 pulled up, and a list of presets. So what we're going to do in this workshop is I'm going to go through the different sounds in this mix and first pick out the right preset for each sound. Then we're going to drop the presets on every sound in the mix. And then finally, we're going to dial them in, and I'll show you what I'm listening to, what I'm looking at in the spectrum analyzer, and how I'm making EQ decisions. So hopefully this will be useful. And here's this track. I just made this track today. I'm digging it. Let me close that little monitor window there. Okay, so first off, what are the elements in the track? Let's go through and take a little tour. We got the kick drum, all right? So let's see, do I have a preset for kick drum? Make sure I don't blast you at the monitor level. EQ8 drums, kick high, kick low. This is something I'm gonna use. Kick low is for like techno house, 4/4 kicks, big, where the kick drum is the dominant low end sound. Okay. I can kind of hear what that's doing. It's making an effect. Let's move on. And before I do, let's map the Z key so I have a little way to turn my kick drums on and off. Now, sub bass. What are we doing with the sub bass? Let's see, EQ8 presets, bass, bass, bass. Aha, bass midline, bassline mid, bass sub. So I'm just going to take the sub preset, drop it on here. Whoa. Okay, so I can hear the preset working, and basically it is creating a sub. Now that might not be the sub we want, so we're gonna keep going and figure out what else we need to do. Here's our progress so far. Before. And let me introduce you to the first problem we have already solved. Before the EQ, you can hear that the bass line has a kind of a click on it. Ta, 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 on every attack. And the micro timing of the bass notes are not quantized exactly onto the beats. So as you hear the click of the kick drum, the attack of the kick drum and the attack of the sub bass are not synchronized, and it sounds like it does not sound tight at all. Guess what? That problem just went away from EQing the sub, getting the click high frequency out of the sub, and making the kick drum a little bit darker so we don't have that problem. So that's one problem we just solved right away. Let's keep going and get into our beat scoop. And as you can see, this is a few channels of drums. And then there's a female vocal coming up later. So maybe I'll take these. What are you hearing right now? I'm hearing a drum beat. It's kind of a disco house type loop. There's a riser in there, or a down sweep. I hear a conga. I hear hi-hats, big hand clap, a snare layer. I hear some kick drum. So what I basically want to do is clean up this whole drums group and get these sounds working together as kind of a smooth, clean thing rather than a big muddy mess. Because right now it sounds kind of like somebody mixing a full disco record on top of this house track. So let's start with hi-hat. Do we have a preset for hi-hat? EQ8, drums, aha, hi-hat, number 1. Okay, what's next? Open hi-hat. And let's drop that on there. Oops, I forgot to map my hi-hat switch to the Z key, because I want to do a before and after with every EQ8 preset. And if you're watching, say hi, let me know where you're at. Or if you're on the replay, you can always find me, Steve at mixertexture.com, mixertexture.com. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. And EQs are on, EQs are on and on. How is open hi-hat? Maybe not such an obvious difference, but let's check this out. Here's our spectrum analyzer. That open hi-hat has surprisingly a bunch of bass in there, right? Now I'm going to hit Z and turn on the EQ. And let's go back to, aha. Now in spectrum analyzer, we can see that we're hearing all the mid-range and high frequencies of that hi-hat, but the low end is sculpted down a little bit, which is making more space for the bass. You do not want to crowd up your low frequencies with sounds that aren't adding a low frequency tone. So let's keep going. Conga. What preset are we going to use on conga? I'm thinking drums, beat loops. And as always, we're going to adjust these presets on each sound. Let's map the Z. And back on. Let's go on drums, group master, yep. And I like to sometimes use a high-pass filter to just identify where is that sound really speaking and which part do we want to keep, which part do we want to cut off. So right down here, doot, doot. You can see that the heart of that drum is poking up around 200 hertz. So we don't really need to allow very much more low frequency in there, just for an example of dialing it in. Now, here's a good one. A top loop. Check out the spectrum analyzer. Look how much low frequency is in there. I hear it like, whoop, 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 whoop. And I don't want that low, mushy, whoop, whoop kind of fluff coming through there. So let's select drums, beat loops, and this time just hit enter. Mapping mode, hit the key Z. Let me know if you can hear this. So what I'm doing is with the upper drums, the hi-hats, the open hi-hat, the conga loop, the snare drum, top loop, I'm basically pulling down the low frequencies and then just stopping there. Later, I'll go back and dial in each sound to figure out the nuances of where there might be a high frequency resonance we have to notch out, like you see in this notch filter, or if that's not necessary. And in fact, let's take a guess here and say, maybe we don't need that notch right now. I put that in the presets as part of the course to indicate that you need to use it. And if you're just coming in, what we're looking at is how to EQ your tracks, which is a course available on the Mixertexture member site, courses.mixertexture.com. And it's 50% off right now because I want you to go through this course with me during the month of June in these live workshops. Use these presets in your tracks, apply the knowledge that you're learning, and share some test mixes with us to find out how you're doing on your progress. So we got the top loop down, right? What's next? Okay, clearly this one is going to be a problem for the kick drum, right? This is a full spectrum beat. You could take this beat and use it as the basis for a whole track. It's got enough kick drum. It doesn't have a huge kick drum, but it's got enough in there that you could use that for like a, I don't know, new wave track or something. So again, let's take our beat loops preset. And let's get on band 1 here, the high pass filter. Let's roll it up. Now we're just gonna listen. The question is, how much of that kick drum do we want in here? I'm gonna roll the high pass filter down. That might be enough, around 150 hertz. Another trick I like to do if I haven't decided what else to do is I'll just bypass all the other bands of EQ so I can hear the natural sound, only listen to the low end, and make a decision of how much low end to cut out. And when I'm talking about cutting out low end, I want this beat to merge with the hi-hat and the snare because we have a separate kick drum holding down the low end. So I don't need this, I don't need that. Let's roll it up to about 200. Move on from there. Now watch out for your ears. This one's gonna be a little bit loud. Okay. This is a kind of a high frequency sound. I'm gonna go straight back to my hi-hat loop and apply this now to some of those high frequencies. And if I'm not using the mid-range stuff, and I'm definitely not boosting the highs, let's just focus on that kind of painful area. And what I'm doing now is the frequency sweep technique, where I take a parametric EQ, boost it up, sweep around to find the ugliest, most annoying resonance in the sound, and when I locate that frequency, I'm going to cut, okay? And I'm using Spectrum Analyzer to just visually see where I'm at. Okay, around 1.3 doesn't sound so good, so let's dip that out. Go to another band of EQ. Let's flip on band 6. Frequency sweep, I'm going to boost it up, sweep it around. Right around 3,000 right there is feeling sort of sharp and piercing. Now let's make sure we remember to map that. Off on. Did I map the other one? I did not. I forgot. There we go. Did I map the hi-hats? Doot, 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 doot. So here we go with our sweep. And I'm going to turn it up a little bit louder. Let's see if it makes a difference. Yeah, I feel that. And since our ears are really sensitive to those high frequencies, and it can actually be painful on a big system, I'm not afraid to cut a deep notch out of there. In fact, let's go to band 4 and take this down a little bit. And don't be afraid to carve out a lot of the sound. If you need to go back and EQ it up and put it back, you can do that later. What I'm doing is I'm cutting in solo. So here's a good practical tip for EQing. When you are first cleaning up a sound, the first time you're making the mix, solo the sound, listen for the nasty stuff, and do your EQ cut in solo. I don't recommend boosting in solo because it might sound good on that one sound, but when you boost every channel by itself, and then you put them all back together in the group, it's going to be too much boost. So I would recommend soloing the sounds first, cutting in solo. Then if you're going to boost, maybe do that at the group level. So you boost the group together and you do a small amount of EQ that affects everything on the boost to get the high end a little bit up or the low end a little bit up or whatever you want to do. What else is on here? Now this is interesting. Watch the frequency response on this cymbal. You can see some peaks around 500 hertz and then up above 5,000. And something's ringing in there. So let's again go to our basic hi-hat starting EQ. We'll use this spectrum now. And I'm going to do something. Oh, I have an envelope in there. Yeah, volume automation envelope. Okay. So now the first question is, which frequencies do we want to use and which ones do we want to cut from this sound? So let's bypass all these other ones. Doop, doop, doop. And get on band 1 and start to play. I am not on the right sound. Durr. Here we go. Okay, I bypassed all those. Now I've got the right one selected. Where's that echo coming from? Let's turn off our returns because we don't need that yet. Want to make sure I'm hearing the dry sound when I'm EQing it. Now it's interesting. This sound actually sounds okay with a super high pass filter. There's an interesting resonance around here. Around 300 hertz, it sounds like a church bell. But you know what? Do I need to find that exact resonance? I don't. I'm not going to try and notch out 300 because I'm just going to high pass filter almost everything out of here. And if you're wondering how high should you go with your high pass filter? Well, the answer is listen to the other sounds in the track, find out where is there a high frequency melody, what else is in the track that's high frequency, and then move your cymbal to adjust so it merges with that. So I'm okay with leaving that really pretty high up there so far. And what we've been doing is listening to each individual sound in solo, dropping a preset on there, and then identifying what's the most important part of the sound. Usually it's somewhere in the mid-range, so we can cut off some of the low frequencies with a high-pass filter. And then if there's a particular resonance that's too much in the mids or the highs, we use an EQ to dip that out or even notch it out with a notch EQ or a parametric EQ set to dip. So that is the drums group right there. Did I remember to... I did not. I want to make sure I'm mapping everything with the Z key so that we can hear the whole drums group before and after. Let's check this out. Here's the EQ in and out. And let's check this on the master channel spectrum. Here's EQ bypass and EQ in. With the EQ in, look at how much space opens up in the low frequency range. Okay? Bypass and after EQ. So what I'm trying to show you here is that by EQing each drum individually, we've cleared out a whole bunch of the mud frequencies to make space for the low end to fit in. Let's bring in our drums. We got kick and sub and beats. And it's going to be time to already start doing a rough mix. So I'm going to give this to you now because you need it. We need it. For a general mixing rule, let's take the kick drum down about -12. Now we have the kick and the sub coming in, peaking, -12, tons of space in the mix. We can identify the kick and the sub are both there. Now let's bring in the beats. And let's check our before and after EQ. I can hear this click in the sub. Ta, ta. Right? And after EQ, low end sounds a lot better. And the beats are cleaner. And so far, we didn't even dial these in for each frequency. We just put them on, basically clearing out the low end and defining what our low end is going to be. So let's move on to our instrument group, see where we're at. So first of all, we've got a mid-range pad. And what is this sound doing? I'm seeing some weird low frequencies in there. What is that all about? Do we want that low frequency in there? I'm thinking we do not want that low frequency in there. So let's go to our pad instrument. It's coming from operator. Can minimize that. Which preset do we have? Synth chords, synth leads, synth pads, warm. Let's drop that on there. Map this to our on-off switch to bypass. And let's check this out. When the EQ is bypassed, there's a big chunk of weird low frequencies coming through on every attack that I don't know what they're there for. I mean, nobody put them there on purpose. They're just there. Now let's kick in the EQ. And that ramp of low frequencies going up as on the low end of the sub range is not there. And in the high frequency, now EQ is off. Some of the highs are going to get taken down with a little bit of a shelf to make it feel a little bit warmer and to make space for a melody in the higher frequency range. So let's keep going on to the next sound. Electric piano. What do we got? EQ, keyboard warm, keyboard bright, piano acoustic. I'm going to go keyboard warm again because I don't want it to be too... I know we have another melody and some plucks. So let's keep this. And I hear one kind of... So I'm going to cut that down. That one peak around 1.5K, we don't need that in there. And let's map this to our on-off key. Ooh, I can hear the difference in that tone when the EQ comes in and out. Let's move on to this pluck sound. What is that doing? The question I'm asking now is I'm looking at spectrum, listening, and asking the question, what is the most important frequency range in this sound? Clearly, it's not that flat line of bass all down below 100 hertz. It's these peaks here, up to about 240, 250. What I'm doing is I'm looking at Spectrum Analyzer, putting the mouse on the frequency line where I see the sound, and I'm reading in the little box to read the frequencies. This is how you find the exact frequency to set your EQs. So now what I can do with the plucks is I can go EQ, synth. I mean, it almost doesn't matter here, but I'll say synth chords after my echo, which is part of the sound. And we've got just one band in here. And since I saw in the Spectrum Analyzer, this bump is up here around 250, I can just roll this high-pass filter right up there at about 200, get rid of some of those lows, and have a sound that's a little bit cleaner. And again, I know I'm ripping through these at high speed, but I wanted to show you lots of examples to make it simple. Let me undo that one. And this is coming from analog. I'm going to bypass the filter built into that device rack. Okay. Oh, was that filter doing gain too? Oh, that was. Okay. So that's part of the sound for gain, so I'll roll the frequency down. Let's look at the spectrum, see what is the part of the sound we want to keep, and get a look at what's in the sound that we can't hear. This is important because with high frequency sounds, naturally you hear it and you think it's only high frequency, but look at what's showing up in the spectrum. A whole flat line of other sound that we might not really need. And the main body of the sound is all the way up here at 2 kilohertz. So what I'm going to do is grab a synth leads preset, open this up. In this case, I don't think I want to be boosting anything. It doesn't seem like it needs a boost to me, or a dip right there. But we do have the option to go all the way up to like 2K. And just remove all the stuff underneath it. And then look at the master again. Nice slope, making space for the other low frequencies below it. What if we want to even make that a little bit steeper? Really cutting off the lows. A little bit of artifacts down there. So that's an example of cleaning up a super high frequency sound that almost has nothing else in it except for one element. So on, off. Did I do the plucks? I did not. On, off. That's on, that's off. Okay, let's audition our whole instrument group now that I've done some EQ cleanup. Check out the master spectrum. drinking iced coffee like in track feedback. And EQ in. Oh, that's EQ bypass, okay. That's our instrument group, looking at the low end in here. And now EQ in. All right, let's pull this back together with the rest of the track. There's the sub. And let's see if we get a little mix going here. Let me minimize that instrument group. Play the full track. Bring up my master here. I can feel there's a little bit of a conflict in the kick and the sub bass, so we're gonna go there next. What I'm listening for here is getting the kick drum and the beat group up nice and loud together. And getting the instrument group coming together too. And I think that track 6 is the quietest one, so let's get some more of that. I brought everything else down, raised up the bus to get track 6 louder. Let's get track 7 in. And I'll surround the piano a little bit at a lower level. We don't need so much of the piano because it's kind of rhythmic, softer tone surrounding the lead. And obviously the atmospheric pad also. Make a little bit of a stereo spread. Now I can solo the instrument group, make sure they all sound good and fit in the stereo space. Now let's go back to the kick and the sub, all right? There is some more work to be done on the drums and all that. The question is, why are the kick and the sub competing? Where are they competing? And how can I fix it? So first, what I'm gonna do is identify where is the lowest part of the sub bass it's playing. On the spectrum, it looks like it's down the note A at 53. And I played the bass line, so I can tell you it's the note A. And it's only going up to about 70 hertz. Let's see, where is the kick drum looking big? Solo the sound, pull it up on Spectrum Analyzer, look at the loudest part, put your mouse on the line, read the frequency in the little box. 47 hertz. So the kick drum is going to be dominant here, about 47, and then right above it, the sub bass should be popping up. So what I'm going to do specifically is go to the sub and make sure it's not allowed to play lower than that one bottom note, the note A. Which is about 55 hertz. So if I park this there, that's a pretty steep filter. I usually use auto filter for high pass filtering. It has a better algorithm for low end, but we can park this one just about there. I can still hear those notes. And now for some fun, let's open up the low pass filter and ask the question, how much of this high frequency do we want in here? How do I answer that? Well, I'm going to pull in the instruments and then see if I hear the bass. There's a nice subby bass. Let's open up the low pass filter. There I can hear the click on the sub. I don't want that click. Let's leave some of the mid-range on that bass. And maybe later on, I'll copy the bass, do some harmonic distortion on the upper mid-range, and leave that as like a fuzz layer in between the mid-range area. But the main thing we wanted to do here is high-pass filter the bass line to get out of the way of the kick drum. And let's see what else the kick is doing that we might want to investigate. What did I say is the bottom frequency of the kick drum? Let's check over here again. About 46, nice and deep. So on here, this high pass filter, which is at 35, doesn't actually need to be that low either. We'll just take it up a little bit, around 40 something hertz, mainly to show you the strategy of locating where your sound is speaking in the mix, what frequency range you're hearing it, what are the hertz, the numbers of those frequencies, and then how to cut and boost those frequencies with EQ. So we're going through the decision-making process of using EQ. This is a little bit of a, that preset had a boost at 60. I'm gonna bypass that. This boost at 125 is interesting. In this kick drum, I don't think we need that. 285, this can be an area that sounds nasty, so let's find out where does it sound nasty in this kick? Ooh. Right there around 150. In fact, do I want that in my kick? No, I don't. Let's scoop that down. Now we're dialing in the middle body of the kick, which is not too bad, but oh good, it's only half an hour so far. I want to keep this reasonably short so it's useful. Doesn't take all day. And this kick drum sample has a little double click in it, right? Put it. And what is this band 7 doing here? Well, all those are the clicky parts of the kick drum. And since we're going for a kind of a deep house vibe in this beat, I don't think we need all that real smacking attack sound. So let's roll this down a little bit. And basically all we've done are some EQ cuts. Now, do I want to boost the kick over here at 60 hertz, 50 hertz? Guess what? In solo, I do. In solo, I like the sound of that big bumpy kick drum. But remember, the sub bass is hitting from 55 hertz and up. So it's wrong to boost the kick drum right now, because anything I boost around 60 hertz is going to compete with the sub bass again. So let's play the kick and the sub, see if I can illustrate that. Now here I am EQing the kick drum channel, and we're at band 2. I can hear the kick drum get bigger, but it's getting a little bit woomy. What if I actually scoop this out? And you know what, honestly, with the kick and sub together, I do not want as much high frequency on that sub. I can hear it kind of clashing with the attack of the kick drum. So I'm going to roll that down. If I do a copy of this sound, maybe I won't let it work with the attack on the kick. It's really important to compare your sounds together and get everything going. Let's check our master channel just for curiosity. So I can see the kick drum is poking up. The sub bass is there. That's what the kick looks like by itself. When I bring in the sub, you can see it poking up in the spectrum. That's way too much sub. Not making dub in this track. Let's fade up the sub just a little bit. And on a big sound system, we want that kick to be huge and the sub bass to be just deep and low and nearby, but not throbbing huge. Let's check the beats. Okay, now we have one more layer that I have not introduced yet.
Meet for the purpose of love.
Oof, that was loud.
We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
Now this is a phone
We
recording.
met for the purpose of music.
I hear a lot of problems.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
I hear some static, I hear some low frequencies.
We met for the purpose of music.
There's a burst at 6K
We didn't meet for the purpose of
that
love.
needs to be at de-essed. So what am I going to do? I'm going to look at my preset list. EQ8 vocal female. We're on the female vocal track. These compressors so far are there to just roughly make it listenable. I tamed some of the dynamics and raised the makeup gain so you could hear it. Now,
Meet for the purpose of love.
here is your preset
We
for female
met
vocals.
For the purpose of music.
Boost in the mids
We
and
didn't meet for the purpose
some
of
low
love.
cut.
We met for the purpose of music.
And again, the question is,
We
which
didn't meet
frequency
for the
range
purpose
is
of
important in
love.
this sound?
We met for the purpose of music.
Obviously, it's the
We didn't meet for the purpose of
mids.
love.
And as a part of
We
EQing,
met for the purpose of music.
I would like to drop in
We didn't meet for the purpose.
a sidechain filter. Now, sidechaining is not part of the EQ course, but in this case, it's part of the frequency control we're doing. So let's set high range, short attack, short release, peak
Meet for the purpose of love.
input from vocal.
Meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
And you can see that
We met
S.
for the purpose of music.
putting my mouse
We
on the
didn't
line,
meet for the purpose of love.
I want to find out which frequency is that sharp S in the purpose. I want to find that
Meet
frequency,
for the purpose of love.
park my sidechain compressor right there.
We met for the purpose of music.
Six,
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
6.7K.
We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
And now you can see the sidechain
We
compressor
didn't
is
meet
hitting
for the purpose of
at
love.
6.7K.
We met
And
for
I like
the
to label my
purpose of
sidechain compressors
music.
so I know that this compressor is a
We
sidechain
didn't
at
meet for the
6.7.
purpose of
And
love.
for the EQ8, what I could
We
do
met for the
is
purpose
go
of
to,
music.
let's
We
say,
didn't meet
pick
for
band
the
7,
purpose
turn
of
this on,
love.
go to a notch,
We met for the purpose of music.
tighten that up, roll it right up to there
didn't
we were
meet
just
for
listening
the
to,
purpose of love.
6.7,
We met for the purpose of music.
widen it
We
out a little
didn't
bit.
meet for the purpose of love.
And I can leave that notch in place because
We
it's
met
not
for the purpose of music.
taking away.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
We're not losing anything by having that notch in at that high frequency. So what I did is I removed the low part of the voice from a kind of a badly recorded phone recording. I used this preset to boost some of the mid-range for the vocal intelligibility and stuff. And then a notch at the sibilant S frequency I found at 6.7 kilohertz. And I also dropped in a sidechain compressor to really pin that frequency and get it out of the way. That was EQing in solo. There's a lot of boost here in the solo mode. Let's listen to what this sound is doing.
For the purpose of love.
Okay, here's our beat. I like to fade up the music, get it in the groove.
We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
Let's open up our
We
returns.
didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for purpose of love, 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 love. We met for the purpose of music, music, music.
All right. So what did I do so far? Let's stop and review. We're talking about how to EQ your tracks. Step one, I soloed each sound, each channel, every track in the song. And I asked the basic question, where is this sound important? So the kick drum is important in the sub bass. The bass line is also important in the sub bass. The beats are all important in the mid range, and we don't want sub bass in the beats. And then for the instruments, we made a group where we have lower mids, mid range, upper mids, and high frequency. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but I ordered these sounds so that the highest frequency one is on the right. These two are in the middle. And the pad sound has a lot of pretty wide spectrum, but it goes lower right here too. And I'm really being careful to stack my instruments so that each one of them is filling a different frequency range. So I'm composing, thinking about frequency ranges, to have one sound at every different part of the mid-range so the track feels full and each sound can be unique without competing against something else. If you do run into some frequency competition, one good trick is just to pan them right and left. That can start giving you some space and separation to hear the uniqueness of each sound without having them masking on top of each other. And
we met for the purpose of music.
Another important principle I talked about was cutting in solo, not boosting until you're hearing the whole group together. Now, this whole beat sounds a bit kind of clattery. So I might do a little bit of like production stuff. I'll show you some of my fun little tricks. Not that. Maybe we can cut these transients a little shorter. It's almost like drying up this loop.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
I'm going to do that again right over here. Kind of tighten up the loops.
Music.
And this one, I pulled this out of my library for that clap sound.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
The question I'm asking right now are, what are the frequency ranges of the conga, the snare drum loop, and the other drum loop? Okay. Let's say this one is kind of like the main drum beat that I want to have in here. Those are all hi-hats. So I'm going to put this one in the middle. So I have hi-hats left, center hat snap kind of thing, and the open hi-hats. Let's make this a little bit bigger. What I'm doing now is using some mix decisions to spread the frequencies farther apart. And when you pan a sound to the side, you don't need so much of it. I think people could be feeling that. Now let's bring in the bottom loop. And guess what? The order of the tracks in my drum group is almost like the order you're going to hear them in the song. So those, like that closed hi-hat is what you're going to hear first probably. Track 12 is going to be a loop I drop in the second area of the track after the main beat's been in for a while. And this one has a little boom, boom that I don't want to have in there. So I'm going to go to clip gain. I hate that when that happens. I don't want all those selected. Breakpoints. Now that sounds a little weird. Let's bring it back in with the other sounds. And this one has a little too much of one little hit. It's that tail. And let's tighten that up. I hate it when that happens. I forget how to not select all the breakpoints at once. Is that an option click? Okay, but I cut out the little tail of the sound from before on that one. That's a much cleaner beat that only has hi-hats and snare and not all the extra little flam kind of hits. Let's bring in the conga and see how that feels together. All right. And our downward sweep. I'm going to keep that kind of peaceful and low key. And our crash. Now, if a sound is too loud and there's a frequency you don't like, before you think, oh, I have to EQ it, try changing the volume. And if there's a sound you like and you want more of it, before you go and boost something with EQ, try using the volume fader. Because after we have cleaned up a sound and gotten it filtered in the right place, basically everything else about that sound is good. So we don't need to boost a little piece of it because we can boost the whole thing with the volume fader. Now I might edit those some more. Let's have some fun on here. Go to my favorites. And gonna drop a little ooey gluey. Drop on 4 to 1. We want a slow attack time. Let's do auto release, dial down threshold. And again, I want to hear this with everything else in the track. That's too much compression.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
And now let's bypass all our EQs.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
Let me know if you hear a difference between before and after with the
We
EQ.
didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
Notice how the piano gets so much quieter
We didn't meet for the
after
purpose
EQ?
of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for for the purpose of
Especially
music.
the vocal, getting that bass out of there.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
And I can even hear that,
We met for the purpose of music.
this middle boost in the vocal
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
is not doing me right.
We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
Don't need that
We
boost.
met for the purpose of music.
And this 2.K,
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
if you have good quality sounds or even usable sounds and you cut out the nasty resonances and the extra crap you don't need, at that point, you shouldn't really need to boost a lot of EQ. When I look at this, what I'm seeing is some cuts, but think about this, like everything here in the mid-range, when you turn up the volume, that's like boosting right here. In between these, around 1.2K, that's like a hump, like a boost.
We meet for the purpose of love.
So let me stop and
We meet for the purpose of
remind you
love.
about this course, how to EQ your tracks. What I did here is put together a bunch of information on what music production is all about in terms of EQ. So we looked at the presets, we looked at how to listen to a sound, drop a preset, identify the important part of the sound, and cut out the stuff you don't need. Just like peeling a cucumber before you put it in a salad, every sound you bring into your track, you're gonna need to do some kind of subtractive EQ to get rid of the crap and bring out the best of that sound so you can turn it up louder in the mix and hear it. Now, how do we learn this? Well, there's some online lessons where I go in detail with the types of EQ and what to do with them. So let me explain some of this. Intro to EQ series is a video. EQ and filter types is a document that you can read online or you can download it that's in use right now in Pittsburgh at the university level. A friend of mine has been teaching with it in some of his courses. And I talk about the different types of EQs, how to use them, what they're doing, and a lot of the stuff we talked about today: frequency, resonance, bandwidth, notch, parametric, shelf, high pass filter, low pass filter. Those are the things we talk about in this course, and you learn them at your own pace. You can read about it, you can listen, you can play with presets, you learn by doing it, and then bring your tracks to us and track feedback to make sure they're getting where you want to go. The frequency landscape is a basic lesson on what is the range of human hearing, what are these numbers on the frequency spectrum, and what is happening in each one of those. So when you hear words like, that mix was really bright, or the low end was muddy, or the mid-range was dull, all those adjectives are talking about numbers, and the frequency landscape is where you learn those numbers so you can understand where to put your EQs to cut and boost frequencies that you like or don't like. Then the secrets of spectrum. This is all about reading the spectrum line, putting your mouse on the line to identify exact frequencies like we did with the sub bass and the kick drum to find out which notes are important, which frequencies are important, and which ones we can cut out. That's really handy. The equalization spreadsheet will help you with actual instruments. So it's a list of all the major instruments we used, like in the presets: kick drum, bass line, sub bass, snare drum, hi-hat, chords, pads, and it'll tell you basically where in the frequency spectrum those sounds are good and where they're not. So it puts together the ideas of like muddy or crisp or bright and shows you on each instrument, like hi-hats or snare drum, to give you an idea of how to dial in your presets so you're not stuck using presets as a fixed thing. You can drop a preset, have a good starting place, tweak it, dial it in for that sound, and make it sound really, really good. Then filter pairs is about more about like auto filter, high pass filter, low pass filter, that kind of thing. The frequency and pitch chart is really interesting. This connects notes in the melody or in the scale with actual frequencies. So if you know anything about piano tuning, you probably heard that a tuning fork is A440. Like the note A is the pitch. The note A is at the frequency 440 hertz. So when you're tuning a piano, you hit the tuning fork, you hear the note A, it's 440 hertz, and you tune every note based on that. Well, this chart takes you through all of these notes and the frequencies, which is really interesting in the low frequency area, like the note G. You find out if you're playing a bass line, you know the note is G. You can find out where to boost that bass line to get that fundamental G louder, or you can find out where to cut that fundamental G out of your kick drum to make space for the bass line. This is a really handy chart that really explains how to work with notes and bass and frequencies. So you get all these online, as well as access in our Discord group to the Track Feedback crew. And normally this is $100 for this course, which is cheap at that price. But because I'm doing an EQ workshop this month in June, EQ 2022, what did I do right? EQ 2022. With that coupon code, you can drop the price down to only $49, which is an amazing deal for the online lessons, pack of presets, all these videos you're getting, which are going to be replays inside the course, and feedback on your tracks in Discord with the track feedback crew. That's what it's all about. It is getting close to 1 o'clock. I want to keep this down to an hour so it's usable. So let's just enjoy this little bit of a mix for another minute here.
Didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose.
There we go. Thanks for watching, everybody. I didn't see any comments today, so I'm not sure if my feed was weird or something like that. But you know where to find me, steve@mixandtexture.com. I'm going to take 1 second and drop the course name and coupon code into the chat for replay so you can grab it later.
We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music. We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose of music.
Okay, there we go.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose.
I think that beep is too loud.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love. We met for the purpose.
Save this one more time.
We didn't meet for the purpose of love.
Bypass EQs.
We met for the purpose of